Hello my dear friends, you're in the military summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours, and the most important updates are coming from the United States of America. Let's discuss them in details. Putin couldn't be happier. Today is the Kremlin day. They are drinking vodka straight from the bottle. This is the big day for Moscow, that was stated by Bolton. The US president effectively surrendered to Putin, former Trump national security advisor Bolton said on CNN, commenting on his call to the Russian leader. Yes, indeed, the 47th President of the United States of America had a private conversation with Vladimir Putin. Let's discuss just the most important statements. I just had a lengthy and highly productive phone call with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. We discussed Ukraine, the Middle East, energy, artificial intelligence, the power of the dollar, and various other subjects. We both reflected on the great history of our nations and the fact that we fought so successfully together in World War II, remembering that Russia lost tens of millions of people, and we likewise lost so many. So obviously that was probably the best call ever from the presidents of the United States of America when talking about any calls in the past between Russia and the States. And according to information we have, this call took place around 90 minutes. Most likely leaders managed to talk a lot and managed to discuss lots of very important things. Later, Donald Trump had another conversation, and this time he was talking with Zelensky. I just spoke to President Vladimir Zelensky of Ukraine. The conversation went very well. He, like President Putin, wants to make peace. And when talking about this call, according to official information, this call took place around 10 minutes. So just to compare with his allies, with the allies of the United States of America, the 47th president talked just 10 minutes, and with Russia, with enemy, according to, let's say, official data, United States of America had the conversation more than 90 minutes. Obviously, we understand who is ally and who is enemy when talking about these, let's say, numbers. Furthermore, we have, of course, some certain reaction from European countries. According to information we have, the Europeans were completely shocked by the things they saw, by the things they managed to get from the open source. The foreign ministers of Ukraine, France, Great Britain, Spain, Italy, Poland, Germany, and the European Union have demanded that Trump involve in Europe in future negotiations to end the Russian-Ukraine conflict. You know that I've been learned since my youth that the power is not the thing that anyone can give you. The power is the things that you can take by yourself. And now we see that Europe doesn't have power because Europe is asking to give them permission to take part of this negotiation process. If Europe has a power, Europe would never ask anybody about anything. They would take everything that belongs them. But we see that most likely they doesn't have anything. They just want to be in the part of this process, and maybe they just want to get additional security guarantees from the United States of America, because if Russia begin another war with Europe doesn't want to stay face to face with Russians. And we have several statements made by Mark Rutte. If Putin attacks NATO, the response will be devastating. He will lose, so let him not try, and he knows it. So that when talking about NATO, we see that they change their narrative, they change everything they talk about. For example, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, they were talking just about Ukraine, that if Russia enter Odessa, if Russia take Kharkiv, we will intensify our activities. As for the 2025, NATO talks just about one thing: if Russia attacks NATO. So as you can see, the focus was moved from Ukraine to NATO because European countries start being afraid of their own future and their own security guarantees. And Europe, since the beginning of the special military operation, provided Ukraine lots of weapon, and Ukraine used that weapon, and lots of Russian soldiers died as a result of the usage of the Western weapon. So I'm not sure that Russia is planning to give any security guarantees to European Union. And of course, now let's discuss the situation in Russia, because when talking about Russia, the Russia's flower is blooming. So let's take a look at this graph. Let's let's take a look at this graph. Shares of Russian companies soared after Trump's conversation with Putin. The Moscow exchange rate index is in a big positive territory. It rose about 3,100 for the first time since July 9th. The ruble rose to 93 rubles per dollar, and this is the common picture of Russian market. Well, Russian companies are flying higher and higher after Trump's statements. Russian economy shown us 4% growth for 2025, but if the situation continue the same, if the situation relations between Russia and US is getting better, of course this picture will keep for the entire year, and Russian economy will grow even more. And of course, we start receiving just positive news from Russia. And obviously Putin will, also he understands that this is very important, and maybe for him this growth, this positive news can stop him from further escalation of the conflict with Europe, with Ukraine. And maybe it's time to start thinking how to earn money, but not how to, let's say, die somewhere along the line of combat contact, somewhere in the vicinity of Velika Novoselka. It's Putin and Trump's world now. The US is no longer interested in ensuring the security of Ukraine and Europe. That was stated by the Telegraph. One scenario: Putin will return to Ukraine in a few years, says Kharkov and Kiev. Then he will invade the NATO country, convinced the alliance will not live up to its theoretic of collective defense. The newspaper scares readers. So we see that Europe is shocked. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to say. And we have another statement made by the Russian officials. Putin and Trump had a 1.5 hour telephone conversation. Both sides agreed on the need to stop the conflict in Ukraine. The Russian president spoke in favor of eliminating the root causes of the conflict. Putin invited Trump to Moscow. Several of my friends told me that they believe that maybe Trump will visit Moscow during the 9th of May, during the Victory Day and Victory Parade that take place every year on the territory of Moscow in the Russian Federation. And of course, when talking about Ukraine, the situation there is critical. Zelensky continues scaring the world about growing growth of Russian army. Ukrainian intelligence believes that the Russian army intends to expand by another 150 troops in 2012 with 12-15 new divisions. So he's trying to, to force Europe to be more aggressive. And that at the same time, when we start receiving reports about calls between first Putin and Trump, and then Trump and Zelensky, few hours later, we start receiving updates from the territory of Ukraine that Zelensky arrested, or he gave or signed or approved warrant to arrest former president of Ukraine, Petr Poroshenko. When talking about some competitions and possible president elections, Petr Poroshenko is the only person who can compete Zelensky, not just because he is the only one who people trust him, because every single politicians have already left the territory of Ukraine because they might be jailed or got into prison. So that's why Poroshenko is the only person who stayed in Ukraine, and he was a very big, threat to Zelensky. So that's why today Zelensky decided to destroy this threat, and he decided to put Petr Poroshenko in prison on charges of treason, and charges that he is a traitor. So this is the situation. Petr Poroshenko, the former president, has already made his statement. Zelensky created a Putin regime in Ukraine. Poroshenko responded to the National Security and Defense Council's decision to impose sanctions against him. The National Security Defense Councils made unconstitutional politically motivated decision that was stated by the former president. So we see that Zelensky, probably after the conversation between Trump and Putin, has begun the cleanup operation with the purpose to clean the political sphere of Ukraine, with the purpose to have no competitions, no competitors during the next elections in Ukraine. He is going to go for the second term. I'm not sure if he's going to win this, but obviously this is going to be very interesting. And now let's discuss the situation on the ground. And first, let's talk about the Sury direction. During the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything about any additional information about the war crimes committed by the Ukrainian soldiers on the territory of the region, but we continue receiving videos of how the Russians were bombing and attacking the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine with the use of Iskander missiles. In this video we can see how the Russians managed to discover the temporary deployment point of the 47th Mechanized Brigade in the vicinity of Malaya Loknia, and as a result of multiple Iskander strikes the entire stronghold was completely destroyed. If we go back to a map, these strikes took place here, and as you can see, according to this video, since the beginning of Ukraine offensive operation, the Ukrainians managed to build a very powerful and complex network of the fortifications, and obviously it's going to be very difficult for the Russian side to break through this defense belt. So that's why the Russians decided to attack first this territory with Iskanders. The Russians continue controlling the main supply roads that goes in the direction of the Suja. During the previous nights we got a lot of videos of how the Russians were FPV droning attacking Ukraine vehicles that were moving from Sumy area in the direction of Suja. A lot of vehicles were destroyed. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Liman direction. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the vicinity of Nevskaya. Currently the Russians are trying to advance in the direction of the settlement by the name of Novolubovka that located to the west of Nevskaya. Furthermore, we got additional updates from the city of Chasov Yar. According to information we have, the Russians managed to improve their positions in the central part by taking under control additional block that was stated by pro-Russian resources. As for the Konstantinovka direction, today most likely the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm that as a result of clashes the Russians established complete control over the settlement by the name of Vadiana Druhe. I'll remind you that 2 or 3 weeks ago the Russians already entered the settlement, but then Ukrainians counterattacked and forced the Russians to fall back. But now, as I understand, the Russians managed to organize another offensive operation, and as a result of last attack the village was completely captured by the Russians. At least in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the offensive Russian forces that were moving in the direction of the settlement. So based on this video we're not adjusting anything, we're waiting for additional confirmation from the Minister of Defense. As for the Andreevka fortified area, during the previous 24 hours the Russians managed to improve their positions along every single direction. The Russians improved their positions along the river of Sukhye Yali by taking under control several positions of the armored forces of Ukraine. The Russians managed to improve their positions in the fields to the southwest of the settlement of Dachne, and the Russians managed to reach the southwestern outskirts of the settlement of Andreevka. The Ukrainians most likely will not be able to stabilize the situation. I wonder when the Ukrainians are going to begin retreat process, because if they don't start this process maybe this upcoming night, most likely they will never be able to do this again. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.